How many of you have ever been in the state of Nebraska? How many of you have ever been in a state of hysteria? In either case, this talk is for you. Once upon a time, there was a Nebraska farmer, and he had a name. And I want you to remember this name, even write it down. The name of this Nebraska farmer was Cabbage Head Q. Dummo. And that's who we're going to talk about this morning. Cabbage Head Q. Dummo. How many are closely related? Cabbage Head Q. Dummo lived in Nebraska farmlands. And there was also another man who lived in the farmlands who had a general store that supplied food and other necessities to the farmers in the vicinity. And not only did he supply supplies to the farmers in the vicinity, but also in the neighborhood. So we'll call him the storekeeper. So one day the storekeeper was taking care of his store, keeping his store, and he looked out through the kind of dusty window, because this was farmland, and who should he see coming down the road on his favorite mule? You guessed it, Cabbage Head. So Cabbage Head got off his mule and sauntered inside, and of course he had a straw sticking out of the corner of his mouth, the straw hat on, and clothes like some of you people wear. And he sauntered in, and the storekeeper looked at him and said, "Good morning, Cabbage Head. What can I do for you this morning?" And Cabbage Head looked around, and he looked at the shelves, and he finally said, "I'll take some of these, and I'll take some of those." And the storekeeper said, "Fine, we'll give you some of these and some of those." And they went on a little bit, and the storekeeper said, "Now look, I understand, Cabbage Head, that you've just built a new barn, a big, enormous barn out there on your farm. Now, as you know, a farm needs paint, lots of paint. And guess who sells lots of paint?" And Cabbage Head said, "Well, I guess I do need paint for the barn, I guess. Never get much thought. How much do you think I need?" And the storekeeper, calculating his little profits in his little machine-like mind, he said, "Well, start off with a dozen cans. How about a dozen cans of red paint?" And Cabbage Head said, "Okay, I'll take a dozen cans of red paint." So it was sold in paint. Cabbage Head rode off. Paint would be delivered later. This exact scene went on for several months. Cabbage Head would come in, and the storekeeper would suggest buying paint for his new barn. Sometimes the storekeeper said, "Well, maybe you better have a little green paint this time. Dozen cans of green paint." "Okay, okay." Next time, dozen cans of purple paint. "Okay, dozen cans of purple paint." This went on so long that after a while the storekeeper began to wonder what was going on. He'd already sold enough to paint half the world. And here he was buying paint all the time. So he said, "Well, next time I make a delivery out that way, I'll stop in and see what he's doing with all this paint." So storekeeper rode out that way one day, 6 months later, after the first sale, and he went on over to where the big barn was, and lo and behold, what he saw was hundreds of cans of paint all stacked up all around the barn, the unpainted barn. And these cans of paint were unused, unopened, hundreds of them scattered all around there. So the storekeeper wondered, what's going on here? So he sauntered on over and found Cabbage Head and said, "Hey, come on over here. CD, I want to talk to you." Get it? CD, huh? "Come on over here, CD, I want to talk to you." CQD. CQD, I want to talk to you. So they both sauntered on over. Farmers always saunter. They never walk. Understand? A little leisurely life. They saunter. How many know what saunter means? Okay. So they wandered on over and the storekeeper said, "What's going on here? I've been selling you all this paint over the months, and all I see is all piled up around your barn here." And Cabbage said, "Well, I don't understand your bewilderment. You told me I had to have paint, so I bought paint. You said I needed more paint? I'm a very suggestible fellow. I bought more paint. Hundreds of cans of paint. You said I needed them, so I guess everything is okay, right?" And the storekeeper said, "Cabbage Head, I want to ask you if you know the meaning of a certain word." And Cabbage Head said, "Well, don't make it more than 2 syllables," he said. And so the storekeeper said, "Have you ever heard of the word apply?" Cabbage said, "Huh? Apply? I don't understand. No, I don't know what that word means. I only went to college." So the storekeeper said, apply means that you take something that is you acquire, and you apply it to something else in order to produce a third effect. Example, Cabbage Head. You have hundreds of cans of unused paint around your barn, and you have a barn that is unpainted. Now, if you apply the paint to the barn, you will produce the third product of a painted barn that'll look much more attractive. It'll protect the wood from the weather. The barn will last a lot longer. You must take what you buy and apply it. And Cabbage Head said, "You know, I never thought of that. Would you show me how to start applying, please?" So the storekeeper said, "Now, see this little fuzzy thing? It's called a brush. And you dip the brush into the paint, and you apply it to the side of the barn. And you go over and over." And Cabbage said, "Let me try that." So he took it by this brush end and got his hands all wet. Because he was new at this, and he painted the back way, put the handle in. But after a while, he learned to do it right, and he washed his hands off. And he got to liking doing something that he'd never, ever done before in his life, which was to apply something. Apply the paint to his garage, which made him a very happy farmer. Again, once more, the relatives of Cabbage Head, because I want to talk to you specifically now. You've been buying paint all these years and you don't apply it, and I'm going to show you specifically where you haven't applied it and show you how. It is called putting yourself in the other person's place. You've heard that. You've heard that before you ever came to this class. That it is a device, a virtue even, to practice putting yourself in the other person's place. But here's the difficulty. That's the last thing you want to do. The last thing you want to do is put yourself in another person's place, because as far as you're concerned, you're the only person who exists. Physically, there is division, and you can understand that. When you look at another person, you can see that they're physically apart from you. You can understand that in the senses. But psychologically, you can't do that, simply because you are your whole world. Proof? You're all wrapped up in yourself miserably. Everything is always turned back toward you, your protection, your advancement, your flattery, your well-being. And the other person doesn't exist for you at all. Not really. When you start putting yourself in the other person's place as a technique, as a psychological device, oh, what resistance you're going to run into. And that is the single first most important thing that you must become aware of, the fact that you just don't want to do it. You'll see in back of that something else. You'll see in back of yourself the question, why should I do it? And that refers to what I just talked about of thinking, why should I do it when I'm the only important person? Look, when you're lost, which you are desperate. And you'll do anything to hang on to you, including the thrill of the self-torment of anger and hostility and blasting out at a world that terrifies you. And the world terrifies you because you're terrified of what's going on and what exists inside yourself. Now I want to tell you an experience, a definite cosmic experience that will come to you as you do begin to practice, and you have to do it on your own. Nobody can do it for you. Putting yourself in the other person's place and seeing that he has pains, that he is as lost as you are. You're beginning to stand outside and see him, and that very standing outside of seeing him or her is also the same standing outside by which you can then see yourself. Every time you put yourself in the other person's place, not with sick sentimentality or something like that, every time you do that, you also make yourself healthier and on the right track, because that same standing apart that you apply to him also applies to you. And this is that watching of your mind all day long, where you can see yourself suddenly blasting out angrily at someone who offended you, for example. Now, presently, as you look out into the world, you see certain psychological things. And what you see is yourself. But you don't know this yet. You don't know how you project your own nature out into the world and see other people as you are, because that's all unconscious to you yet. But you look out into the world and you see enemies, you see competitors, you see revengers, people who are a threat to you in some way. You see people who appeal to you, that you desire for your own benefit, of course. You see a world that you assume, because you're asleep, you assume that these people are apart from you, but they're really in a negative oneness with you. Now, any man or woman who follows these teachings that we get here, who practice diligently and very painfully at times, putting himself in the other person's place, anyone who does that will find something miraculous happening. You will find the following happening, and this is a psychological thing, you understand, not a physical thing. Just now you look out and psychologically you see oppositions to what you want. You see enemies, as I said. But you're beginning to apply spiritual principles. Now, as you do this, over a period of time, a curious and marvelous and strange thing begins to happen to you. And here it is. Now, I want you to remember what I'm telling you, because when it does happen to you, you will recognize it as a right thing and not be frightened by it. You understand we're frightened by the new even when it's a favorable thing? Even when something good comes to us for the first time, because we can't fit it into our neurotic memory, we get afraid of it. It's like rejecting an angel because you don't understand it. Now here's what happens as you begin to work inwardly and look out at the world psychologically, and also look inwardly. The arrow is pointed out and the arrow is pointed in, both ways. Very faintly at the start, one day when you get up and you start looking at people psychologically, you will do a double take. You look at someone and you say, what's different about him? I don't understand. And it won't be clear to you yet. For the next several weeks or months or even years, you'll look out at other people and you'll be in wonder and confusion at the start at why that man or that woman out there looks different to into your spiritual sight. And what continues to happen is even more startling and healthy and marvelous. What happens is that you finally see what is happening, and what is happening is that that other person is beginning to disappear as an enemy. I'm using the physical as an illustration, you understand, to parallel the psychological. If you were going out in the world and you knew a lot of people and you were walking all around town, and you looked at people physically, and they started to dissolve, get invisible, little at a time, you know, like the Invisible Man sort of. A little at a time, that you begin to see through them because their solidity is diminishing. And it's so strange at the start, you don't realize that this is what is happening. Little by little, people begin to disappear from your physical sight. That won't happen, of course. Now, bring that over to the psychological, which is what we're after, of course. You no longer see that other person as being so fiercely antagonistic to you as he was a year ago. You no longer see that other person as a source of envy as you used to have all these years. It's weakening. They're no longer existing quite so solid, so hard as a separate person whom you must envy or hate. This disappearing act on the part of everyone in the world, close and far from you, this disappearing act continues and continues and continues until everyone in the world has disappeared to you as a threat, as an enemy, as someone who can hurt you. They have disappeared. Now for the final shock. You look inside and you have disappeared also. It had to happen that way. It's a two-way, singular process. Because as you begin to apply truthful principles, as you begin to put them into your life, you began to lose your delusions about yourself. You began to lose the delusions, the illusions, the neuroses, the wrong thoughts, which, when projected outward, created the enemies. Because you had insisted upon being you, being right, and when you're wrong, you had insisted on hanging on to that. And one necessity of hanging on to your ego, neurotic self, one necessity is to create an opposite out there so that you can say they're wrong, therefore I am right. But you, through surrendering yourself to something higher than your foolish intellect, have understood what salvation and deliverance really means. And what it really means in simple form is the disappearance of everything wrong inside of you, which you have erroneously and foolishly and painfully called your personality. So, as you disappeared, where is now the person who is going to see anything threatening, who see any enemies out there? The pseudo-self, the invented personality, which was the enemy, made up of neurotic thoughts, wild thoughts, tormenting thoughts. This identity, having disappeared, the opposite also disappears. And you go this far, you'll walk through this whole world and never see an enemy, but what you will see in place of people who are threatening to you, what you will see from now on from your own clear system, your own spirit, what you will see is other human beings who are like you used to be years ago. and you understand them perfectly. And if you told them that, they'd get mad, as they do in this class sometimes. New people, who are you to tell me you know me better than I know myself, stuff like that. But you really do, because you've gone through the disappearing act. And you say, you know, well, maybe a little smile, not in superiority, but just a smile of relaxation, because you've earned that relaxation by getting rid of your nervous self. And you look out, and with real compassion now, you look out and see yourself, your former self, and other people. And when you understand them like that, there can't be any criticism. There's no need for you to have criticism or hatred for anyone, because you've disappeared as a person who did that, who used to do that. This is called authentic compassion, authentic caring, authentic understanding. And that can only come out of a spirit that is like reality, that is reality, that comes from the high place. So that there's no individual anymore doing anything at all to the world out there. Having found the inner kingdom, that is all that it's necessary. Then when your physical eyes and ears and other senses go out into the world and you respond to what you see out there, there is never any distortion, because there's no wrong person inside to distort. Now let me ask you, where do you suppose you belong and fit into this total picture? How many of you, raise your hands, how many of you still have enemies of any kind? Mental, you have enemies? How many of you feel frustrated at the conditions that you're in? See? Who is being frustrated? Your own self-centered, egotistical little self, which you fear to let go of. Again, because you don't know the alternative. All right, in case you've forgotten it. No guarantees. You have to let go of your foolish, invented self. You have to let go right now, not asking God or anyone else what's going to replace it. If you do that, then the charlatans will come along and get you, and they'll promise you all sorts of weird things so that you'll like them and give them money and things like that. No guarantees at all. There's one thing, and I'm going to give you this one thing right now. If you will enter this process of putting yourself in the other person's place as an exercise, one of many that you could engage in, if you will do that, put yourself in the other person's place, you will come to the point where you understand that you must leap into the dark. You must do that. Now, I am telling you that if you will leave the old world behind, your old nature in back of you, if you will simply leave it with no other thought but the fact and the spiritual enthusiasm, I might say, that you're going to leave the old world, that is it. Now, I am telling you personally that if you do that, you will have the reward of everlasting life. I am telling you that. Now, you know it intellectually. You will never know it from your whole spirit until you have done it. Until you've taken the leap away from yourself, not knowing what's ahead of you. Not trying to invent some phony heaven, some phony reward that the world does, which keeps them sick and miserable, and which makes them hateful, and which makes them vicious human beings running around calling themselves good and spiritual and religious. You want it? Again, the choice is yours. Now, one thing for about 5 minutes, which is the time we have left about. Would you say that you are presently sliding downhill? Now, don't try to get out of it. You just did. I know you wretches. I know how you're not capable of anything but lying. Lying is your nature. The nature of a wolf is to behave like a wolf. The nature of a vulture is to behave like a vulture. What makes you think you have anything but the wolf and the vulture in you? You have nothing but that. Don't kid me. So when I ask you whether you're sliding downhill or not, there's a certain wrong but very definite fear aroused in you. What do you mean telling me I'm sliding downhill? I can quote religious books. I pray. I meditate. On and on and on. Why did you have to defend yourself? Why did you go into fearful self-defense? Because you're lost and you know it, every one of you. You're lost and you sense it, but you lie about it. Liars tell lies. All right, now that we've got that, but you lie. Because you're afraid, by the way. See, you're afraid that when someone tells you you're going downhill, that they are trying to push you downhill. You're already going. I am trying to show you how to turn around, and you're too stupid to get it. Your ego nature is too stupid to get it. That's what's afraid. Do you understand that? Your old nature, your neurotic self, that is what reacts with fear. How can the Spirit of truth ever be afraid or be antagonistic or be hostile? See, always try to see who or what is expressing itself inside of you. If you're afraid, you're wrong. If you're angry, you're wrong. All right. So you are indeed sliding downhill because you're an egotist. Unless you listen to what I'm telling you and come back to every meeting, if you live, nearby, if you can. Unless you come back to every meeting, you'll continue to go downhill. That's accurate prophecy. And no one knows it better than you because you've been doing it all your life, and unless you stop, you'll continue to do it. And when you get older, 40, 50, 60, 80, I'll be out on the street. Some other student will be out in the street, and they'll pass you on the street, and a little memory will come up. That's that man, that's that woman who came to the meeting 10 years ago, and after one meeting disappeared, went out, didn't want it because they were too egotistical to want the truth. They wanted their egotism rather than truth. And you know what the student or myself would see in the face as you pass him on the street? An utterly lost human being, more lost than he was before he came here for the first time. It'd see you, and you'd be looking straight ahead. Your hand would be down at your side. There'd be a blank look. And that blank look tells the story of a blank spirit. You could have come back and you could have inherited life. But you preferred the life of your lies and your violence, which you conceal, and your hatred. That's what you preferred, and that's what you are going to get. That's what you are. You always get what you are. You always get more of what you are. And you won't even know. You're so dazed and so gone, you won't even know that one of the other students perhaps saw you as you passed on the street. See, there's no way you could know that they are looking and seeing you perfectly because you're all wrapped up in your own little prison cell called your own mind. And you're looking straight forward. You have no awareness. You don't even have physical awareness. You're so wrapped up, so intense of thinking about get home before the program starts on TV. Or look over my bank account and see that I've doubled my income. This is what you're thinking about, and you're looking straight forward. And you're living in hell. Now, there's sliding downhill. Slide, turn, and climb. STC. Slide, turn, and climb. If you will put yourself in the hands of truth instead of in the hands of that monster that you've been trusting up till now that lives inside of you, in front of your own eyes, you will see the second stage, which is the turn. You're sliding downhill somewhere and you sort of kind of turn in a circle, a small return, an arc, a curve. That's the turn. The action is always going on in your life. You don't really stop, not really. It's a turn where action is always going on, but it starts to turn the curve a little bit, and pretty soon you've turned, and now you're going uphill. The turning process rarely occurs to human beings. Few ever do that. Most human beings continue to slide right on down into the swamp. The vast majority. And it will happen to you unless you listen to what the truth is telling you here. But when you choose truth instead of your own foolish lies, which you lie about, you even lie that you lie. You lie that you lie. This curve, turning point, which will bring you back uphill, is an enormous process in itself, filled with hundreds of shocks, of strange things, strange encounters. And it will turn your emotional life upside down in your mind, and you will think that you're going crazy when in fact you're going sane. So you must stick, above all, you must stick with this turning process where you're beginning to lose your false securities. You see, you believe in your lies and you become hardened in them. Hard. You believe in your lies, and it gives you a hard face, by the way, too. Very unpleasant. If you're unpleasant, you're lost. If you're lost, you're unpleasant. You will begin to see that you have trusted your lies as being a guide. What you've got, a lie, which is an unlighted lantern, and which you call a lighted lantern. You called your lie the light. So the turning process involves losing the unlighted lantern. Therefore, you get scared because you have trusted, listen to this, you have trusted what has been dragging you down into the swamp. So as you lose your false trust, you shake and get scary and go through a new process of spiritual evolution. And you must stick close to truth at that time. Because I said, you don't know what's going to happen to you until you get into it. But when you get into it, I am telling you that it is a stage. Where that stage will lead is upward, where you begin to lose all the sickness and all the follies and all the fears and the anxieties which all of you in this room now live by. Every one of you in this room is nothing but a bundle of anxieties, and you know it. Let me use a very simple phrase. Do you in this room have 1 ounce of common sense? For your sake, I hope so. Those of you who reject, unconsciously of course, you'll even come up to me and tell me what a fine talk it was, and you'll be rejecting it in your heart. Some of you maybe. If you have 1 ounce of common sense, you must begin to try to understand what it means to serve your true interests. Now I'm going to tell you what will 100% serve your true interests. It's called God. It's called truth. It's called reality. Nothing else can do it. You can't serve your true interests. Society can't. No one out there, because they don't know what it is, because they are not serving their true interests. They want gold and glory. Have you got beyond the stage where you begin to see the folly of getting rich, of getting famous? Have you gone beyond the folly of wanting desperately above all to cling to your sickness? In this room, sickness will be exposed as sickness. And oh, the devils and demons that will scream out and protest against that. I want to tell you something very encouraging. In this room, in this class, no demon, no devil, no falsehood can ever win. If you put yourself under the true care and guidance of truth, you are safe, and you are safe for the first time. What condition would you say you're in when you put yourself under the monstrous so-called guidance of your own sick mind? By coming faithfully to these classes, by being sick of lying, you can begin to slow down your downhill slide. And you begin to understand that you're sliding downhill because you've lied about it, and you call your going downhill uphill. You say it reversed, and yet your own scares are still there, aren't they? How come if you're going uphill, you're still scared? How come you've got so much hatred in you? You'll begin to notice, first of all, that you are sliding downhill. And then with the help of truth, as expressed in this class in hundreds of different ways, you will begin to understand and see for yourself how you're beginning to make the curve around, and then you will see yourself going uphill, and you'll see yourself little by little getting less angry and less afraid. And all these other marvelous experiences will come to you, such as seeing both your false personality disappearing and equally the world as a threat disappearing to you. It's all yours if you want it. Take it. I want to give you a phrase that will be familiar to your experiences, if not to your vocabulary. And that phrase is, sick of life. Familiar? Of course it is. The world is sick of life. It is sick. It is sick from life. It is caught in the whole confusion and madness and sick of it, and has no idea where to turn for the doctor. The reason the world has no idea of where to turn for the healing doctor is because it doesn't want one. This world you live in is quite content to continue as it has been continuing for the last thousands of years. People today, right today, were quite content with being sick with their state, and in the very perverse, odd, peculiar, weird sort of way, laying back and enjoying the sickness. You know, when you're physically sick, you can lay back in the bed and nothing is required of you. People come around and take care of things for you. And again, in a perverse way, people say, well, if I'm spiritually sick, I have no responsibility. I have nothing to do. I have nothing to do but lay back and complain and let other people serve me. And so you have a globe of 4 billion patients. Human beings who have so resigned. I'm talking about you listening to this talk. I'm not talking about people outside this room. People who have resigned themselves to being this week what they were last week and the week before. Never desiring anything else, never seeking anything else, never even questioning the condition that they are in. As a result of this, all these sick human beings on earth go around getting mad, just as you did today. When you were frightened today, that was one variety of your anger. When you were envious today, when you're nervous and upset, that is a variation of your anger and your hostility. And you really have nothing to be hostile at, but you invent something. What you want is a justification for your anger, and in order to justify it and say, I have a right to be this way, you deliberately invent a target over there and over there and over there. You have to keep inventing them. You wouldn't know what to do if you ran out of people and circumstances to lash out against. Now, I want to tell you a principle, ally, and supporter of this sick state, in which human beings groan about their conditions and value the groaning and the anger more than they value the self-investigation that could cure it. There it is. What are you choosing today? I said you were angry today, and you know it, every one of you in this room. You chose the pleasure, the destructive, hot, fiery pleasure of your malice over the other choice, which was, say, instead of blowing up at this condition inwardly and hiding it from other people, of course, instead of rejecting utterly the impulse that came over to you to get angry at your condition, instead of rejecting the anger, you welcomed it and therefore cut off the possibility you have while you're still alive here on earth to be different. Now let me tell you a problem. When a person is physically ill for a long time, certain types of people, they tend to like that better than being healthy. Because when you're healthy, as I said before, you have to go out and take responsibility, and you have to do things for yourself. So the human beings on this planet destroy each other systematically, each one of them by seeing how much they can lay back and get served. You don't think so? If you don't understand what I'm talking about, it's because you don't understand your own ways, and you don't understand the ways of this world. Politics, religion, education, the whole business. I'll make it simpler. All lost human beings, and they're all lost human beings, have a very fixed policy, which is their ruination, which is to give as little and to get as much as they can back from the world, under 1,000 disguises of pretending to give something to people. Man or woman say, I give you in marriage, I take you in marriage or in friendship. And all it is a bargaining position. Do you feel at all any shame or any guilt when I tell you that you're so lazy and so lost that you're looking for someone to take care of you? You had better listen to me. Up till now, you have been wanting someone else to take care of you. Who? The government, husband, wife, your own stupid ideas. That's what some of you use. You want these ideas to take care of you, and you're never taken care of. And you know it. Why don't you give up? Why don't you have the honesty to examine your life and see, first of all, that I'm telling you the truth about yourself? You men wander around, you effeminate men wander around looking for a woman to be strong for you. That shows how sick you are. And you women with your guiles and your tricks, trying to get a man to take care of you, take care of your responsibilities. What a miracle it is when a right man and a right woman get together and they understand these things. And they don't lean on each other, but depend upon each other naturally, and it is right in the spiritual life. Very, very rare. A lot depends then on what and who you are associating with. And first of all, and most falsely beloved by you, you're associating with your own mind. That's what you've got, that's what you cling to, that's what you refer to, and that's what betrays you. But you haven't anything else, so what are you going to do but refer to your mind? Your associations are your downfall, and you refuse to let go of the old, the ruinous. You refuse to let go because, as we've covered many times in this class, you demand a guaranteed replacement, and there is no such guarantee. And you'll never find one. Because if you want a guarantee, you will then find another version of your previous ways of thinking under a new disguise. You'll change your religion, or you'll change your wife. You change your residence, or you change your philosophy. You change the way you dress. You change the school you go to, and nothing has changed. You're still living with yourself. And all the time laying back in that psychological hospital bed, just hoping that someone is going to come along and see you as you want to see yourself, which is someone who deserves. What you deserve is to be booted out of that spiritual hospital and put out in that street. And the colder it is out there, the better it is for you. You want to stay inside and let someone else warm up the furnaces, don't you? You want someone else to bring you the water and the food. Youth, do you dare sit there and unconsciously reject what I'm saying? I know you do. I know your nature, all of you, even those I haven't met before tonight. I know what you're like. That's why you're here tonight. If you were free, you wouldn't be here tonight. So then, what is your attitude so far toward what you're hearing? And you know very well, all of you here at this point, that what I'm telling you is striking home. I know it and you know it. And the reason I know it is because I know I'm telling you the truth, and there's something in you that reacts to that, not necessarily accepts it, but reacts to it. And woe unto any of you who lose the chance you have tonight to understand what life is really all about, instead of wanting it to twist it according to your pleasures. Now I'm going to tell you a story about a man who is living like the 4 billion human beings on earth live. And you'll understand what I'm getting at. Shipwrecked, boat went down, thrown out into the ocean. There was a piece of lumber that he's managed to grab onto, desperately clinging to it. And when you're clinging to a piece of wood out in the middle of the ocean, it's a pretty desperate condition, isn't it? So he was scared and cold and thinking that it might be the end of him. But lo and behold, try to see the parallel now. This is a spiritual story. Lo and behold, a raft came along. A big raft, not a little one, great big one, big as a tennis court. Big flat raft. And some men were on it, several men, a few women. And they came along and they saw him in the water and they yelled out, "Come up on our raft and we'll take care of you. We've got food here, we'll give you 3 biscuits a day. We'll rescue you from where you are, but there's one thing you have to do. You have to paddle the raft because we're on our way to land and we need people to work for us to paddle the raft." Well, he of course jumped at the chance, so he left the piece of wood and jumped on the raft. And immediately they showed him where to go to work. And he went back and started paddling the raft, which moved very slowly, of course, because there was just one man paddling it. And it was a big raft, but it moved a little bit. And they gave him 3 crackers a day. And he paddled and he paddled and he paddled, but he noticed that they never arrived at any place other than water. And he thought about it a little bit, but couldn't figure it out. But they gave us 3 crackers a day. A little later, another raft came along, same size. They came along, and the captain made a uniform for himself out of rags. He yelled out to the rower and said, "Come on over to us, and I'll give you 4 crackers a day." He's going up in life, huh? So he jumped off the first raft, jumped to the second one, and the same thing happened. He started paddling, 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 paddling. Never reaching anywhere, but now he had 4 crackers a day. Another raft came along, 6 crackers, 8 crackers. Pretty soon he was a very, very successful paddler. He was getting 12 crackers a day. And he was still in the middle of the ocean, paddling he knew not where. And scared and lonely, and being taken advantage of because of his stupidity. I'm talking about you. Oh, look at all the work you've been doing. What are you getting for it in return? A little miserable paycheck, a little flattery from someone, a little company now and then. You've got your favorite TV shows. Maybe some of you have 12 crackers. Maybe you drive a big car or something. What have you got? You've got nothing. You've got nothing but heartache paddling out there. You know, when you get up to making 12 crackers a day, your hope of getting anywhere begins to fade, and it had better. You know, the next raft that comes along, you get 14 crackers or 16 crackers. If you have 1 ounce of sense at all, you'll say, what good is it to get 20 crackers a day, or 50, or 1,000? What good does that do? I'm lost, and you are. We'll leave him out there, just as we have to leave the world out there. But you know, anytime that man wanted, he could have looked up from his rowing and his paddling. If he'd lifted his head a little bit, he could have seen land. He could have seen what he really wanted, what he yearned for. And he could have left the crackers behind and dived into the water and swam to shore. I wouldn't want to live the kind of a day that you here in this room lived. You know what it was like. You felt it. You went through it. You wonder, for example, how come you have so many disadvantages and those other people seem to be so happy? They're happily married. Oh no, they're not. They're simply clinging to each other. I don't know what marriage possibly has to do with happiness, or lack of marriage has to do with happiness, because it's another thing. There's another thing involved. How many of you, let me ask you a question before we go on. How many of you talk to yourself? How many of you give yourself answers? How many of you are paddling around in the middle of the ocean? How many of you have some idea that if you had 1,000 crackers a day, you'd still be as hungry? Yeah. Now I want to go into a very precise explanation and detail of a certain form of talking to yourself. And you're going to have to listen carefully, because it is such a leap into your unconscious that you won't see it the first time, or maybe the first 500 times that it is explained to you. Because you've never had a living experience with this particular department of talking to yourself and being involved with your own psychic system in the wrong way. Now I'll illustrate this too. Follow extra careful from now on. And maybe 10 years from now, maybe you'll buy this tape and you'll listen to it over and over. And 10 years from now, you'll take it out and listen to it again. And 10 years from tonight, you'll smile with recognition that you at last, after 10 years, understand what I'm talking about. Don't assume you're going to understand. You won't. You can hear my words and you can start. Imagine a country, a tyrannical type of country, in which all the citizens are required to go every day and spend an hour in a think trap. Now, what's a think trap? A think trap is a big room, bare except for a chair in the middle of the room. And every citizen of this country was required every day to go into this room with the door locked after him and sit down in the chair in the middle of the room and think what the instructions over the loudspeaker told him to think. Get it now, follow, because we're going to go into something that's very much concerned with your life and you don't know how you're dragged down by it. So a man is required by the law of this land to go into the think trap. Sit down, and the voice over the loudspeaker each day gives him a different subject to think about. Today you're required to think about ancient Egyptian music. Now you're to sit there and think about that because that's the order that was given to you. Next day, another order comes through, and they're not altogether sensible either. Egyptian music might make a little bit of sense, but the next day, one that doesn't make any sense comes along, and this time the order is, you're to sit here and think for an hour as to why one bridge is longer than another bridge. The third day, some other topic that he is required to think about. Think about all the colors that you've seen in the last year. That's what you have to think about the third day. All the citizens of the land has to go every day and go in there and think about what they were commanded to think about. And it's a pure dreary and painful process to have to think according to a command instead of thinking spontaneously the way you would prefer to think. But this is the law. And there are soldiers out there who enforce the law. So everyone obeys and goes inside once a day. This is the way they spend their lives. And they come out tired, discouraged, and very, very hostile. But they smile at the soldiers because the soldiers have the guns and the authority to put them in prison. One day, one man begins to think about the condition. And he says to himself, I wonder why I continue to do this. And he asked some of his friends, why do we continue to subject ourselves to this torment where we have to think according to what they suggest and order? Why do we do it? And all his friends say, well, because we've been doing it, because we've been doing it. It's a habit and it's a law. And this one investigator, self-investigator, said to himself, well, I wonder what would happen if the next time they told me I had to go into the think trap, I just said I'm not going. I wonder what would happen. And he asked his friends, what do you suppose would happen? And they predicted all sorts of dangerous and harmful things for him if he did that. He said, I'm going to try. And so he tried. One day as the soldier gestured for him to go inside the think trap, he said, I'm not going. And the soldier said, pardon? And he said, I'm not going. And the soldier's face changed, it grew harder, and he raised his rifle a little bit, and the man said, I'm not going. And he said over and over and over, regardless of all the threats that the soldier gave to him, he said, I'm not going. And he discovered the most astonishing fact that any human being will ever discover, which is if you refuse to obey spiritual tyranny, your tyrant will be destroyed, but not you. The soldier got angry, so angry that he started to tremble and his rifle dropped. And he picked it up again and he went into a rage and he screamed at the man. The man said, "I'm not going." And other soldiers came around. 5,000 soldiers surrounded the man. There he was in the middle of it. He said, "I'm not going." And they couldn't touch him. The reason they couldn't touch him is because they had no power to touch him. They were too enraged to do anything sensible. They were not capable of it. What they could do is bluff. The bluff, the lie, has overwhelmingly succeeded with the human race up to this point. It has succeeded with all of you in this room and listening to this talk. It has succeeded with you because you're afraid to rebel against your own sickness. You're afraid of what's going to happen to you. Please listen. What do you mean what's going to happen to you? You're already wretched. You're already scared. Don't kid me. Your wife can't comfort you. Your husband can't. He's as scared as you are. You just both cover it up in different ways. And your friends and your organizations. Human beings are a pack of sheep huddling together. So certainly revolt, right revolt, and rebellion is part of it. Now, I've set the background for something that, if you get it, you will see yourself someday right in the act of setting yourself free. Remember we said many times, sometimes you can catch yourself red-handed in doing something wrong or thinking a negative thought. Remember we said that? You catch yourself white-handed in catching a right act. Now I'm going to explain it to you. You're having a conversation with someone at home, here in this room, anywhere at all. And the other person brings up a subject, of course, that he or she is interested in. And let's say the subject is something about finances, let's say, money. And this person likes to make money and likes to talk about it, likes to invest. And so that's what he talks about to you. And so you're sitting, you're having coffee at home, relaxed, enjoying the evening. And this other person says to you, "Let me tell you what I ran into today. I ran into this situation where if you buy these products at a certain price now, it is guaranteed that the price of the products is going to go up. And I'm going to buy $10,000 worth of the products. And maybe you'd be interested in it too. But I know, from my professional experience," the man is continuing to say, "that if I buy $10,000 worth, that in a year I will have doubled my money." Watch yourself at that split second, and you will see yourself ordered into the think trap. Because money, oh, that's good. I like lots of money. If he's going to do it, why shouldn't I get in on it? And your mind is gone into a place where it really doesn't want to go. You want to be free. You don't want a $10,000 profit. But all your little greed and all your little excitement and the contagion of his excitement over it, and he's got his papers here and his facts. You don't understand them at all. But you're leaning on him. You're leaning back in the hospital bed, hoping that he knows what he's talking about. Man, this is exciting. Think of what I could do with $10,000. So your mind at that instant starts to churn, to whirl. You have been ordered to think about it, and you do. You understand that the next day the whole thing blows over. There was nothing to it. The man was a financial failure, and all his life he's been doing things like this. You know people like that, by the way? They're always got a big deal going. Always the big deal. All right. Think of another example. You find examples in your own life after this talk where in a casual conversation someone brings up a certain subject, and because you're so confused, out of a sense of loyalty to the other person, also because you're afraid to leave your mind open and fresh, the smallest suggestion to someone else comes into your mind, and you fall into thinking about what they suggest. You think it's a duty, for one thing. You think it's necessary because when someone suggests a subject, am I not supposed to get involved in it as a good husband, as a good wife? The answer is a screaming no. You have permitted your mind to be stolen for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 hours. You have permitted that other person to drop a beguiling suggestion in your mind, in a casual conversation even. And you have allowed that to take over your mind instead of being a real student of these higher truths. And sit there alert and awake and conversing. Sure, we talk to each other all the time. But you're watching your mind alertly, and you are not going to get trapped into a false loyalty of having to think that you have to even discuss it with him or with her. Ooh, maybe he or she will notice that I'm not interested. For heaven's sake, that is the point. Look what you sell your spirit for. The proper facial expression. To pretend that you're interested in what they're interested in. You're not, and you know it. And you don't have to be. You're ordered to go into that think trap and think about these 1,001 foolish and useless subjects, and you obey the loudspeaker because you don't know any better. You don't know that you don't have to walk into that think trap in the first place. You don't have to take in the other person's ideas and words and promises or whatever they are. You don't have to take them in and ruin your life. Who said so? Anyone who gets angry with you, who criticizes you for not being interested in what they want to talk about, you had better investigate that person too. And you had better ask yourself why you're selling your spirit to that person. You're selling it because you're lost. You're out in that raft. You're selling it because you're scared and you want to be with someone. What kind of people are on the raft? But people who are as lost as you are. And they'll use you, and they'll exploit you, and they'll give you a minimum number of crackers. If they see they're going to lose you, they'll up the ration to another cracker or two today, or 2 a day. Look up, jump off that raft, and swim on toward shore. I'm going to go over it one more time. You're in a conversation, all right, gentlemen? You're in a conversation with a girl that you're attracted to. And she makes some kind of a little remark, and watch your imagination go to work. Watch all your desires go to work. And watch yourself get trapped by her. You ladies likewise, talking with a man, maybe a man that you're attracted to. Why are you attracted to him in the first place? You can go into the think trap all day long, continue to, as you already do. You can continue to do that, or you can think long and hard about what I've explained to you tonight, about how you're sitting across the coffee table with that person and he or she makes the remark, and you watch how your mind falls victim to it. You don't have to think about what the other person wants you to think about. He wants to think about it because it's to his benefit. And it gives him something to blab about. One clue. If you're extra sharp, you can notice that you resent the other person trying to impose his thought life onto you. And just seeing that unconscious rejection, which you've brought up to consciousness, just seeing that would be a first step. Ah, the beauty of it. You're not being disloyal, you are being intelligent for the first time. Now, I urge you to remember carefully everything you've heard tonight. Take it home. Take it down to where you work. Take it everywhere you go. And you watch how even a chance overheard remark, maybe at the market, chance overhead remark can take your mind over, and for the next 5 minutes you're thinking about what you heard. Don't do that. Instead, walk through that market or down at that office or at home and know where you are at the moment. Know exactly what you're doing. That other person is leaning forward because he's so excited about pushing his thoughts into your mind so that he'll have support. And all the time you can see his hands going forward, and you can see the excitement in his eyes. Don't fall asleep. Stay wide awake. You do that, and you'll be cured of being sick of life, and you'll have a healthy life. It is good, essential, that you have the wish to control your own life. When you start your day, you should have the right wish to understand thoroughly those events and those people that you're going to meet during the day, and want to handle them casually, efficiently, and with the certainty that something higher than you is doing the work. So it's a good thing. It's a marvelous thing to want to be able to be in charge of this world that you live in this very special way. Now, unfortunately, people don't want to be in charge of their own lives. They say so, but they don't mean it. They don't mean it at all. Human beings would much rather be in charge of events, of finances, be in control of other people's lives. Because in their misunderstanding, this is what they believe to be the right way for them to live, to exist here in this world. They believe that the sense of power they get, of having authority, of having influence, they believe that this sensing that they have is the true way to live. Having taken control of other people as being the right way, they can't see that they cannot have that and command of their own lives at the same time. When you command your own life, there is never any question, any strain, any problem connected with the events and the circumstances that you encounter out there. Knowing who you are, knowing that you can live from your real nature, there's no fear, there's no indecision, no doubt at all about whatever you encounter. Because wherever you go in this world, no matter what financial circumstance, what geographical location, To be in charge of yourself is to be in charge of everything that you meet. What a marvelous mystery for you to begin to explore and to solve, so that you can see that all these anxieties and perplexities that face you every morning, they are all built on a false foundation which you have never investigated and put aside. Think back a little bit into your earlier years. Do you remember that time when you worked in a certain office, then you met a certain man, certain woman, and that changed the course of your life somewhat? It gave a turn to the course of your life? Remember that time you went to high school or college and again met someone or had a certain circumstance that changed the course of your life? You traveled somewhere? What I'm saying is, in earlier years, you met this person, that event, that condition, and these you called events which had control over which way you turned. And then you say that this person that I met, that I married, or formed a friendship, or a financial enterprise, you say that this event had power to either give you happiness or misery, success or failure, whatever phrases you used. The reason you attributed happiness or unhappiness to the people and events is because you were under the control of the events, because you simply didn't know that you didn't have to be. If you could look carefully inside your system tonight and understand it, you would see that you're very fearful of that world out there, because it has 10,000s of events, of crises, of situations that you run into. Right where you are now, you run into them. And you start figuring out ways in which you can get the maximum amount of pleasure out of them, perhaps, or at least avoid punishment. And it doesn't work, does it? You know very well, all of you watching and listening tonight, you know very well that down inside you feel yourself to be at the mercy of everything you encounter, even your own thoughts. How about that? Never mind the opposition and the crises out there. How about the internal self that is always giving you far more trouble than you can begin to handle? And you sometimes wonder, do you not, whether you're going to make it through another day or not? And you look around and you wonder just might there be some other way, some other solution? And that is your whole problem. You look around and you say, where can I find help, not knowing the very cunning self-deception that you've played on yourself, to think that you, as you presently are, can never find help. You'll never find it. What you'll find when you go out and meet that event, or meet that organization, or meet that person, what you'll find is something that is on your own level of misunderstanding, which you can get involved with and get a thrill out of, and finally be cast aside, as you always are. Cast aside and cast down. As long as you fail to understand that your present nature can never find happiness, you're going to have to run into the blank wall time and time again and get those terrible headaches, whether spiritual or physical. What you don't understand is that inside yourself, and unknown to yourself, you have built up a series of escapes. You have built up a series of thoughts and of actions and reactions and antagonisms and places to go and things to do. You have built all these up as forms of escapes. So listen to this, please. You've built up all these distractions and escapes to prevent yourself from finding happiness. Because you really don't want real happiness. What you want is all the defeats and all the thwartings and all the pains which you have so unconsciously treasured that you won't let reality itself, truth itself, tell you about the mistake you're making, and so you continue day after day with what you're doing, and day after day with what you're feeling, and crying out, is there no end to it? There is never an end to it, unless you listen to what you're being told when truth talks to you and tries to get through. That's the problem. You won't let something higher than yourself get through to teach you something different from what you've learned. If you would have the courage and the honesty to see the real reason why you're missing the mark in life, if you could see the real reason, the strength and the wisdom and the wish to make correction would come to you. Now, I want to tell you an illustrative story, and when you think of this story in the future, please remember that it's told for the purpose of helping you to remember what we're talking about tonight. Picture the days of bowmen back in the days of medieval times of archers and archery, back in Merry England, medieval times. And there's a great archery tournament about to be held, and thousands of people come from all over England to where it's being staged, and they have an archery contest extending over a period of 5 days, and all the great archers of the land come, and they will shoot a few arrows every day for 5 days, and at the end of the 5 days the greatest archer of the land will be crowned. So since we're in England, we might as well make it Sherwood Forest. So one archer comes out of Sherwood Forest, and I think you know who lives there. So Robin Hood comes out of Sherwood Forest to take part in the archery contest. Disguised, of course, because the sheriff of Nottingham is always after him, if you remember your history. So Robin Hood steps up the first day at the mark, and he looks out and sees the target out at a reasonable distance, and right in back of the target is the woods, forest, right immediately in back of it. So he takes in the whole situation, and when his name is called to take his time for firing the first few shots of the day, he steps up and he shoots 5 arrows, one after another, and he's disappointed. He's missed the mark. Oh, they hit the target all right somewhere, but you know Robin Hood, he usually hits the center of the target, doesn't he? Well, he didn't today. And he was disappointed, and all his merry men in green were disappointed too, because they expected him to hit right down the center, as he always does. And he always does in movies, of course. So he thinks about it, and he can't figure out why he's doing so poorly. But he says, well, just a temporary slump, I'll do better tomorrow. But the next day, the very same thing happens. Robin Hood keeps an eye on the center of the target there and lets fly his arrows, and off they go. But again, they're way off the mark, all around the edges instead of in the very center. And again, he's getting more dismayed than ever, and his men are wondering about it too. And the third day, as he stands up to fire again, he looks at the target, and he looks at the woods in back of the target, and by seeing something, he understands something. And you might remember that. Your seeing is your understanding, your higher seeing, your spiritual seeing. Seeing something, he then gets his bow and gets all his arrows out, shoots 5 in a row, and they all hit in the very center of the target. Next day, 4th day, gets up again, looks out at the target, draws the bow, all 5 in the center of the target. Everyone cheers. Robin Hood is back in form again. 5th day, looks out carefully, draws the arrows back, lets them fly right in the center. Last 3 days, perfect score. And so he wins the contest and is crowned the greatest archer in England. When the contest is over and the tents start coming down, he calls his merry men over and says, I want to show you something. Our enemy, the Sheriff of Nottingham, is up to his same old tricks. Come with me. So they walk out to where the target is. And Robin Hood says, now look in back of the target. And what do you see in the trees and leaves in back of the target? And they look and they see something glittering up there in 3 or 4 places, something glittering that they go closer to, and they finally find out what it is. What it is various jewels and a silver cup and rings and bracelets which have a glitter to them, which had been placed right in back of the target in the trees. And Robin Hood then explained, and listened to the spiritual lesson of it. He said, my enemies did this in order to defeat me. What they did was very clever. And you had better understand right now how clever the foe of your spiritual growth is, because if you don't, you'll stay as you are and you'll be deceived. What they did was hang some necklaces and a series of rings and glittering gems in the tree right in back of the target. And their psychology was pretty good. They knew that when I stood up there, I could see the glitter and I would be carried away, distracted by curiosity. Now what is that glitter back there? And they made it just enough so that I would see it but not identify it clearly. And they knew that while I was drawing that bow, my mind would be escaping into what is going on back there. I've never seen anything like this before, and no matter which way I look, I see the glitter. They knew that I would fail, which I did at the start, but I finally saw what it was all about. I studied and I could understand the trick that was being played on me. Well, Robin Hood had an exterior foe. We have an inner one that has built up a system of ways to keep you from hitting the mark. And it has succeeded up to this point of your life, and every one of you listening and watching know it. That foe of your inner development is very clever. It knows how to make you wonder. It knows how to get your eye off the target. It knows how to make you miss. Well, won't you nod your heads and agree that it's succeeded with you individually up to this time? You look at your life just today, and you may have even made some kind of a vow that you're going to do better today, and the vow fell down before life itself because you didn't understand it and didn't understand yourself. Do you know why you do what you do? Do you know why you go where you go? I will tell you. You do what you do and you go where you go because you expect to be treated in a certain favorable way, period. Listen to what I said. You say what you say, you feel what you feel inwardly, you go where you go, you think what you think. You get associated with people, all for the purpose of feeling something favorable, hoping that those circumstances and those people will treat you the way you want to be treated. And you couldn't make a greater error in your life.